So now it's being recorded. Well, thank you very much for joining today's webinar. Today, we're going to discuss a very important topic. It's budgeting and forecasting best practices. I have a special guest with me today. So let us first introduce ourselves. I'll start with myself. My name is Alex Keselman. I am a solution engineer here at ApprovalMax. And for the past 7 years, my main job was to help companies worldwide to implement different technology. And have a great friend of mine here, James. So I'm passing over to you to introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, my name is James. I'm an account manager with Fathom. Been with the team for just over 4 years now, so working closely with accountants and businesses to help them streamline reporting, forecasting, and advisory workflows. So really happy to be on this webinar today.
Thank you for being here. So we'll start with a short agenda just to understand what would be our goals, and then we'll kickstart. So for agenda for today, we'll start with a few polls just to get to know a little bit about you guys, those who is attending today's webinar. Then we'll talk about ApprovalMax and how does it work. Then we'll take a look on the ApprovalMax budget checking feature, and we'll see how your approvers can see in real time their budgets and compare that against the request they're approving. Then we'll move on to Fathom, and we'll see the way it works. Then we'll take a look on how to create a budget and how in Fathom. And at the very end, we'll have Q&A section, though I would highly encourage you to ask any questions along the way in the chat section of Zoom or in the Q&A section of Zoom, so our team members and ourselves will be able to help you during the webinar. All right, so the goals are set, and let's actually move on and we'll start with two short polls. So feel free to ask to answer these polls. Let me just start them. And the first one, we just want to understand which tools you're already using. So if you could just identify some of the tools or apps you're already using, that will help us a lot. Thank you very much. Oh, very engaged audience. So a few more votes. So another 10 seconds. All right, so let's see. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and let's end the poll. All right, thank you very much. That was the first one. The second one, we want to understand, let me just put that up. All right, we want to understand some of these problems and challenges that you're facing with your accounts payable process and with the budgeting process. So if you could let us know, it's a multiple choice. So I'm starting the poll right now. It will help us to understand where to lead the webinar. Awesome. Okay, let's see. Majority of answers goes in the same direction. So James, I feel that you have a great audience for you here today.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, last 10 seconds, last few votes. Let's go. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and ending the poll. Well, thank you very much for voting for these polls. It will give us some understanding on the way we should structure today's presentation, today's demo. And now let's actually switch to the actual presentation, and let's talk about the products, and let's talk about the budgeting and forecasting for today. And I'll start with ApprovalMax. So for those of you who does not know about ApprovalMax and never seen the product, we are #1 tool to get your financial documents approved on time. So we've been a part of Xero and QuickBooks Online ecosystem since 2016. And since that time, we became quite a big part of both Xero's and QuickBooks Online ecosystems. Actually, right now, we're also integrated with Oracle NetSuite. So if you want to give it a try with the NetSuite, it's now also possible. So just very briefly, if we'll take a look on the, for example, on the Zero Marketplace, we will find more than 250, actually right now it's already 250 plus 5-star rating reviews. And at the same time, in 2020, ApprovalMax became Zero a Partner of the Year, starting from New Zealand market. And then next year in 2021, we became once again Zero a Partner of the Year, but this time in UK market. And in 2022, this year, we became the finalists for the same award. However, what do we do? Well, if we'll take a look on the companies out there and we'll see how they approve their financial documents, we'll see that a majority of them still use some outdated, redundant tools like paper-based approval system or email-based approval system. During the pandemic, working with paper became quite impossible because a lot of us been working from home. A lot of us are still working from home, to be frank. And printing out the documents, storing them, archiving them, and sending them via post and mail became quite impossible. So a lot of companies switched to the email-based approval system, which is not great at all as well, because you simply cannot scale it enough. Imagine if you're one or two people within your team who is approving all the documents, then it might be fine. You can manage who will be approving all of those documents. But once you have more and more people involved in the approval process, it becomes really a game of cat and mouse, where you need to send all of these multiple notifications to your users. You need to keep track on whatever being approved versus what is not. And it simply does not give you enough power of understanding the quality of data. And that is exactly what ApprovalMax does. We are trying to completely eradicate any need for paper or email-based approval system by providing you a workflows, a multi-step and multi-level approval workflows for both accounts payable and accounts receivable side. And it's all enriched with information like all of these attachments, your budget checking, bill to purchase order matching, and all of that is on the go. So your approvers will be able to make their approval decisions with all of the data on the mobile app, via email notification, or in the web application. From the other side, for you as an accountant, we are generating a thing called the audit report. That is just a PDF document showing you by whom exactly and when exactly that particular approval decision was made. And this audit report is automatically sent, streamlined over to your accounting software. So that is on a very, very general level. But talking about the key features of ApprovalMax, we'll see that, as I mentioned already, the core idea behind the product would be workflows, multi-step, multi-level workflows for both accounts payable and accounts receivable side. So it might be that you're working only on the purchase order side, maybe you're working with the bills, maybe with the credit notes or sales invoices. We can cover all of those things. So you can build up the process for each and every financial document. But it's not only about the workflows, actually. There is much, much more behind that. Things like bill to purchase order matching, if you want to have even more robust spend control. Things like budget checking, so your approvers in real time will be able to compare budgets that you have in your Zero account against the bills and purchase orders and make their decisions more accurate. Things like customizable reports, so you can build up reports based on the criteria. Let's say if the bills are pending approval and we want to see who are we waiting for, bills that were already paid and we want to see what was the payment date, and bills that were already approved and we want to see how long the decision took. And things like fraud detection and analysis tool, which will allow you to keep track on some potential and fraudulent activities. Let's say if someone is trying to bypass the workflow, or if someone is trying to change things after the final approval, you will keep track on such things. And of course, for your convenience, for your approver's convenience, all of that can be done within the mobile app, both available for iOS and Android. So you have full access to all of your data, to all of your requests, and based on the matrix, based on the workflow, it will be automatically routed to correct people from your team. They will have their push notifications, they will have access to their budgets, to the bill to PO matching, and so on, so on. So, but the main topic for today's discussion was budgeting and forecasting. And one very powerful thing that ApprovalMax allows you to do within the product is to keep track on what is your budget from your Zero account against the bills and purchase orders you're approving. So in real time, your approvers, without having any access to Zero, can see what exactly they're approving and how does that correspond to the budget. So without doing any blind decisions or decisions based on the intuition, you can make your decision based on data. And this data is taken from Zero and constantly updated. So now you have a full understanding of where your money goes and how you can forecast it for the future. So with that being said, I can move to the main part from ApprovalMax side. I will be the live demo, very short one, but I will give you some little understanding of how these workflows are actually built and how your users can see the budgets against the request they're approving. So with that, I'll stop sharing my screen and I'll show you the product itself. So what do we see here? And let me give you a bit of a context here. Once you'll create your free trial with ApprovalMax, and there is a 14 days free trial, once you'll connect that to your accounting software, like Xero, QuickBooks Online, or NetSuite, you'll have access to your multi-step workflows. So what are these workflows? It is pretty much just a canvas of your organizational structure. So let's imagine in our imaginary travel agency, Marco Polo Travel Agency, we have several people who is approving on behalf of their departments, and we have our senior level management. So for that, if I'll go into my approval workflow, what I'll see here, it's two approval steps, managers and the CFO. Each person here, Jim, John, and Liz, they have their own set of rules because each column here represents different data point. So let's say if the bill comes from the CSM department, it goes automatically to Jim for his approval. If it comes from the finance, it goes to John, and so on, so on. Now, once they'll do that, once they'll do their approval, it goes in sequence to the next step to the CFO, where these guys will be approving everything that is over or equal to 100,000 pounds. And we can build up as many approval steps as needed. There is no limitation on that. We can drag it whenever we need to. We can rename that. We can add as many users as we want to. There is no limitation on that. And once that is done, we can then provide rules what they can approve, and we are set to go. Then for our users, the whole process becomes really straightforward and very seamless. Because if we'll take a look on my required my decision screen, what we'll see here, it's all the requests that pending my approval. So right now I have different bills from Black Book Store for Kafkaesque Accounting, I have bills from Qatar Airways, from Travel Genio, and so on. But now, talking about the budget checking, if we'll go into our main menu and scroll all the way to budget checking, here you have ability to select which option you want to select for your budgets. So you can either upload your budgets manually via CSV, or you can simply pull them from Xero via API. So if you have budgets in your Xero Budget Manager, they will all be sent over here into ApprovalMax. You can select what should be the budget check period, let's say year to date. You can activate those budgets that you want to be active. And now for your users, when they see their requests, they can see how budgets compares to the request they're approving. So for example, this bill from Travel Genio is for the product department. It's one of my tracking categories, and it's coded to account code Travel International. Therefore, I can see straight away that budget for product department with nominal code Travel International will appear to me. I can see what is my budget check period. I can see straight away what is my remaining budget and what will be the impact of the bill that I'm approving right now. And I can straight away see what's the status. If I want to dig into the numbers a bit more, I can always click on the budget itself. So I will be able to see what is my overall budget for the full period of time, what is my remaining budget, how many bills and purchase orders I've already approved, and how many of them are on approval. Same goes for month-by-month expenditure. I can always see if I have underspent somewhere, if I've overspent somewhere, and I can reallocate budgets in my Xero account in order to make it compatible with what I'm actually approving. So just like that, I can straight away see all the necessary data. And if everything looks fine to me, I can click on approve. It will disappear from requires my decision and goes straight away to the next person in line. And that's how the ApprovalMax works. Now let me go back to our presentation. And once we have all of these data, once we've created a simple or very complex process where each and every person involved, now we can make our decisions based on the actual data rather than making that on the intuition. And once we are making these right decisions, once we have all of these data in our Xero account, now we can start creating our forecast and actually budget for the future. And with that being said, I want to give mic over to James. So James, over to you.
Awesome. Thanks very much, Alex. It's I've never actually seen the ApprovalMax product myself, so it's really interesting to see how that helps with the approval process. I'm always hearing from the firms that I speak to how important it is to have accurate data in your accounting system, because that's going to help you to be able to effectively plan for the future and make those right decisions. So if you just switch over to the next slide. Yeah, so this is where a tool like Fathom can really come into play. Once you've got that data accurately flowing from ApprovalMax into your accounting system, Fathom then allows you to use that information to generate powerfully simple financial analysis, reporting, budgeting, and forecasting, which you can then use for better insights and decision-making for your own firm or for the clients that you're advising. Next slide, please. So just a little bit more about Fathom as a company. We actually believe that our purpose is quite aligned with what your purpose would be as accountants. We believe that behind every business, there are courageous people who have stepped out of their comfort zone, have taken a risk, and we want to provide them with the clarity and confidence to be able to make the right decisions for their business going forward. So we're a Brisbane-based company. We're founded and headquartered in Brisbane, but now we've grown into a global team with offices in the US, the UK, and the Philippines. We're a top-rated app for Xero, QuickBooks, and MyOb, and we're trusted by over 60,000, and I believe it's just recently ticked over into 70,000 companies in 80 countries all around the world. Next slide, please. So in terms of where we sit in the app ecosystem, you can see apps like ApprovalMax sit at the front end to help with the automation of data flowing into accounting systems like QuickBooks and Xero. Fathom then sits on the back end and pulls in your financial data and allows you to use that together with non-financial data to generate best-in-class reports and forecasts to help save you time and also make better decisions moving forward. Next, please. So I've mentioned a couple of these features briefly, but just wanted to highlight that Fathom really is designed to be a complete business or advisory toolkit for accounting firms. So using the data you pulled in from your accounting system, you've got the ability to generate interactive KPI dashboards, which you can use to present to and impress your clients going forward. You've got custom reporting, which can be fully automated with templates. You have the ability to plan for the future using budgeting and forecasting. And we've also got features for multi-entity organizations as well. So the benchmarking feature allows you to compare and rank different entities against each other, which is fantastic for franchise groups particularly. And you also have the ability to create consolidated groups, including multi-currency consolidations, which we have received a lot of feedback from customers that can be a huge time saver, particularly if you're using something like Excel for those consolidations. Next, please. So now let's jump into budgets and forecasting. We want to do a bit of a comparison there. They have a lot of similarities. They're looking at projecting future data, but they do serve different purposes as well. So just wanted to explore some of those differences here. So budgets are typically used as goals or an ideal state for the rest of the financial year. It's something that would typically be set up at the start of the year and would be quite aspirational in nature. So this is where we'd like to get to this point at the end of 12 months, and we will be quite happy if we're able to achieve our budget figures consistently. It's also really commonly used as a baseline for comparison to see how you're tracking in terms of performance. So this is where you see that actual versus budget variance analysis coming into play. And budgets typically don't change throughout the year. It's something that will be set at the beginning and then just remain static going forward. And on the other hand, forecasts are typically more realistic projections of how the business is currently tracking and what the actual expectations are going forward. So ideally, a forecast would also update quite frequently as well as new data becomes available. This keeps the forecast dynamic and up to date, and that's what we start to refer to as a rolling forecast. Next, please. Awesome. So now in terms of how this all works in Fathom, this is all done through Fathom's forecasting feature. So this is a multi-use feature where you're able to create a budget and a forecast, and you're able to keep track of both of those within the system. And the fantastic thing about this is that Fathom has that real-time integration with your source accounting system. So you can always be confident that the data that's being brought in to help you calculate the future figures is always coming from the source of truth. So you're able to make those accurate and up-to-date decisions going forward. Awesome. So let's move on to the demo portion of Fathom. We'll show you how you can create a budget in Fathom, as well as how you can report on actuals against budget and do a bit of variance analysis. So I'll just share my screen here. And can you see that coming through, Alex?
Yep. See perfectly.
Yeah, awesome. Perfect. So what we're looking at the moment is Fathom's forecasting feature. Currently, we're looking at the profit and loss. So you can see a list of all of my revenue, cost of sales accounts, expenses. Across the top, we've got access to the balance sheet and cash flow statement as well. But for today, we're going to be focusing most of our time on budgeting the profit and loss. So just orienting ourselves, if we scroll to the left here, all of these grayed out cells are actual results that are coming in from our accounting system. So we can click on these. There's nothing that we can change because this is our historical data that's coming in from Xero, QuickBooks, MyOb, or Excel. But if we scroll to the right, we can see all of these white cells. These represent our budget or forecast figures, and we've got access to 3 years into the future. Now, we are building out a budget today, so we're really going to focus on the next financial year only. The first step of building out the budget in Fathom is to consider what numbers you'd like to represent as the baseline figures going forward. So for example, my sales cafe account, I can click on any of these cells and it pulls up a panel on the right-hand side where I can see what the last 12 months of my historicals look like, as well as what the next 3 years of budget or forecast figures look like. Now you can see at the moment, it's kind of repeating itself over and over. And the reason for that is I've set up a particular rule for this account. So you can see this rule here, it's actuals from last year increasing by 10%. So it's got a bit of a trend upwards. There are different rules that you can choose from. If you don't want to use actuals from previous periods, you can use things like average results. You can select constant or growing rates over a period of time, and even build out your own custom formulas as well. But actuals from last year is a great option to get started with. The reason for that is you're using you're budgeting the future figures based on historical figures. So there's a basis in reality. What the business has done in the past, you're using to use for your budgets going forward. And then of course we are applying that 10% uplift. As you remember, budgets should be something that is quite aspirational in nature. So we want to apply that uplift so that when we hit that, this represents that we've met that business growth over time. So that really represents the first step of building out your budget. You can apply that across multiple accounts to kind of project what that budget would look like over the next 12 months. The next step that we'd recommend is starting to consider, are there any projects or plans that you'd like to incorporate in that budget that you know that are going to happen over the next financial year? So for that particular purpose, you've got the business roadmap. So you can see here, we've listed out several plans and projects we're looking to run for this particular business. We have a marketing campaign, which is starting October. We're looking to hire some people, purchase assets, and also take out loans. And just at the bottom here, just wanted to draw your attention to this cash on hand metric. So we can pull this up and actually see we're tracking our cash on hand for each month, but we're also tracking any other metric like gross profit or operating profit. And this is going to update based on any changes we make to our budget. So you can see our cash on hand is performing a little bit below where we'd like it to be for October and November. So maybe we should move out our marketing campaign 1 month to see that how that affects the cash flow and our profit. And you can see now that October has refreshed live and it is now above the threshold that we would like. We've also got this loan sitting in December. Maybe it makes sense to move this together in conjunction with the marketing campaign. And now you can see Fathom will respin the numbers and we're looking good in terms of cash flow over the next financial year. So this is probably the best strategy for us to employ for our budget going forward. The last thing I'll show you in terms of building out a budget in Fathom is the scenarios option here. So this is where you can start to build out multiple budgets based on different scenarios that you can imagine potentially occurring. So you might want to model out a best case scenario. Maybe you have a worst case scenario. You can see I've modeled out quite a topical scenario here where inflation maybe will increase an additional 5%. So, if our costs go up 5%, if our expenses go up 5%, what is that going to look like in terms of our cash flow? How is that going to affect our profit? These are some ideas that you can incorporate into the scenarios. And the good thing about this is that you're able to switch between scenarios quite easily. So if I click on my best case, you can now see I have a completely different configuration of the business roadmap. And that might be because in this best case scenario, I no longer need to run that marketing campaign because I've got enough sales coming through. I no longer need to take out the loan because we're not short of cash. As you can see, all of our cash metrics, gross profit, operating profit, are doing quite well. So that covers building out a budget within Fathom using the forecast feature. What I might show you now is being able to report all of those budget figures compared against actuals on a regular basis. So this might be something that you're preparing for business managers. It might be something that you're preparing for clients. And we want to make sure that it's not an arduous task to set up these reports on a frequent basis. So this is something that I've created for this imaginary client. So I've given them a logo and a background image. Currently, we're viewing the online version of the report, but just worth noting that the Fathom reports are all available in PDF format as well. So you can download this to PDF and send it to the client via email or print it into hard copy to give it to them that way. But if I scroll down here to show you what this report would look like, just created a bit of an executive summary with some commentary coming through to explain how that particular month has performed. But we've got some key numbers coming through as well, so we can keep track of the most important metrics for the business. And you can see here that we're also tracking how it's performing against the budget. So revenue is falling 26% short of the budget at the moment. Not fantastic, but costs and expenses are doing quite well. You've got your financial statements available. So I've created an actual versus budget variance table here, showing you current month, the budget for the current month compared. You've got the variance in dollar and percentage, and then you've got a projection of the entire financial year with year-to-date actuals and the budgets as well. Scrolling down a bit further, we've got some charts and graphs flowing through, and you can see that it's quite animated. So that's one of the benefits of viewing the report online. It does wow any clients or any managers that you are talking to when presenting these numbers. These charts and graphs are quite useful to be able to track on a monthly basis how you are performing. So you can see I've got the 12 months of budgets coming through, and I've got 1 month of actuals. July has just completed, but when the next month rolls around, we'll have a new set of data coming in from Xero or from QuickBooks, and we'll have some new actuals coming in for August. So again, it's a fantastic way to kind of keep track of how you're performing actuals against budget. Are you tracking closer to the budget, or are you starting to pull away and get further and further away? And what actions are required on the back of that? Just wanted to highlight here that the reports aren't static. You can fully customize these reports. It's a very seamless experience to customize it. You can easily swap different components around. It's a drag and drop experience, as you can see. Double click to edit to customize further. And anything that you would be looking to add into the reports can be found on the left-hand side in these tabs. So any commentary in terms of text boxes, any kind of charts and graphs, whether that's line charts, bar charts, or pie charts, and of course your tables and financial statements. Just find what you're looking for and drag and drop it into your report. Finally, the last chart I'll show you today, which would be helpful to include in a monthly budget review, is a scenario projection chart. So at the moment, we're looking at a single metric, which is cost of sales. We can see the actual performance up to the current month. And then from there, it'll start to branch out based on the different scenarios we've been able to create. So you can see here that the middle line, the blue line, is our main forecast. Then we have our best case scenario where costs are a little bit lower. And we have that inflation plus an additional 5%, which shows us that costs have increased quite a bit. So just an example of a budget monthly review report you can create. You would save this as a template and then automate it into the future. So it automatically brings in the data from Xero or QuickBooks into Fathom, into these reports, which can then go straight to the client or into PDF. Perfect. So I hope that was a helpful look of how you can create a budget in Fathom and how you can report on the budget. I might pass back to Alex to close out the session.
Thank you very much, James. It actually looks super great. I've been looking at the presentation, looking at all of these graphs, and I like the way it's being designed, how slick the design is. So I believe that's one of the main things. Let me just open this up. One of the main things that it's sometimes you have a hard time get used with the new software, but when it looks so good and when you can build those graphs in just a sec, it makes the whole process much easier. So thank you for sharing this. All right, so we actually coming to the last part, and there will be one last poll just to get to know a bit about your preferences on the way we're going to contact you, if you would like to get some additional information or not. So I'm launching this poll right now. So if you could please tell us your opinion. Awesome. Thanks a lot. Just a few more. Last 10 seconds. But thank you very much. It's actually already more than half of audience give their preferences. So let's say 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1, ending the poll. All right. So with that being said, we're actually coming to the last part for today's discussion. That would be a Q&A section. I've seen already that a few questions has been answered by our guys on the background, but let's take a look on what we have. So in relation, Angie's asking, in relation to adding budgets into ApprovalMax, can you pick and choose which accounts to add a budget to? Some are not others. Of course, so you can do that via Xero Budget Manager. You have an Excel spreadsheet sort of layout that you can utilize. You can create as many budgets per tracking category, and each of these budgets will have a rows that will contain nominal codes. So for some of them, you can add budget numbers. For some of them, you can do not do that. So that's for you to decide. But yes, of course, you can do that on the nominal code level. I believe that's the question for you, James. We have a small team, 3 directors, 19 staff. Would this work on a small scale? Actually, I think that's for both. For both of us. Well, I'll start from our side, from ApprovalMax side. We see that a lot of value ApprovalMax gives if you have more than 3 approvers, 3+ approvers. So if it's just a one-man show, probably you won't have much benefit of using ApprovalMax because simply you cannot create any workflow for one person. It will be always just one. But if we have 3 and more, that's when you'll find the most benefit of using ApprovalMax. So that's on our side. James?
Yeah, absolutely. If you've got a small team, we have different user permissions available in Fathom. So if you're looking to use Fathom and maybe working with a small team, getting the rest of your team involved, you can specify the user permissions that they would have to access the different levels of data. And then, yeah, you've got the ability to basically segment their access to the different areas of the tool.
Awesome.
I might just answer a question that we've got from Craig Archer. Matt has already answered this, but I thought it might be good to just explain to everyone on the webinar today. So Craig's asking, can a budget be set up in Xero and feed through into Fathom? That's a fantastic question. Today we covered how you can create a budget in Fathom, maybe if you don't have a budget currently, but if you've already set up a budget in Xero, in the the budget manager, you can certainly bring that into Fathom to use as the budget. You can even tweak it further in Fathom, or you can use that as it is. So you've got the options available to you.
Perfect. I see one question for ApprovalMax. How do users create a PO in ApprovalMax? In ApprovalMax directly or through Xero? Both options actually will work. So you can either give access to your users to raise purchase orders within the product itself, within ApprovalMax, and you can create them in Xero and send it over through a waiting approval state. But I would recommend to create that in ApprovalMax for one big reason. First of all, you should not really give access to users to your accounting software simply so they won't be exposed to all of this financial data. Moreover, once you give access to your users just to ApprovalMax, you can provide specific rules and values that they can use when they're raising those POs. Let's say we have several people working in marketing department, so probably they don't need to have access to all the nominal codes that you have in your chart of accounts, or maybe they don't need to have access to the product department. Therefore, we can limit them to only values that they will be using when they're raising those POs. So both options are available, but I would suggest to use it via ApprovalMax. Will a recording be sent to the participants? Yes, of course. So everything being recorded, and afterwards, I'm not sure exactly when, but we will make sure to send you a recording once it's processed, and once our marketing team will send it over to you.
Got a question here. Can you add a budget to Fathom that does not have an account code? So for reporting purposes, and include them in the charts as well. So you've got an example here, revenue as a percentage of turnover figure. So you'd like to report on that particular turnover figure. Absolutely. So, if you've got different percentages that you'd like to create in Fathom and report on them in charts and graphs in the reports, that's something that can be set up as a formula KPI. And then once those have been set up, you have the ability to insert them into charts, into graphs, into tables, and include them in your reports.
I see one question for us. She is asking if one bill has more than one budget owner to approve, can they see each other's budget's amount for ApprovalMax? If you have several line items and they have different account codes and different tracking category, and in that case, several people are involved in the approval process, yes, they will see as a document as a whole, so they will see all the budgets for both of these line items.
Just on the tracking category point, got a question, can Fathom report and budget by tracking category? And the answer to that is absolutely. We've got the ability to bring in up to 60 tracking categories from Xero, and you can create reports for them. You can also set budgets for them through several different features. So you can certainly, track your actuals and budgets for tracking categories.
One question for us. In ApprovalMax, if an invoice has not been approved, how does it sit in Xero? Often we have monthly invoices that we want to use in the monthly accounts, but won't pay until we have received approval. Great question. That's very depends on the way you streamline your invoices actually in ApprovalMax. There are several ways. You can either create those invoices manually in ApprovalMax. With that option, it won't hit your general ledger up until it's fully approved. The other option would be via Dext Prepare, so you can have direct integration between Dext, ApprovalMax, and Xero. In that case, again, it will sit in ApprovalMax up until it's fully approved. Or the third option might be if you're working with any other OCR tools like HubDoc or AutoEntry or things like that. So you will send your invoice into awaiting approval state first in Xero. That's when ApprovalMax will suck it up and run through the sequence of your approval steps. But at the same time, it still sits in your Xero account. It still sits under your awaiting approval. So you'll be able to create these actual reports, though these bills are not yet fully approved. And once we receive an approval, then those bills automatically moved from awaiting approval into awaiting payment state.
If we've got time for one more, Alex, or some more.
I think let's do a few more because I see there's a lot of questions coming in, and it's great. Thank you very much for all of those questions. We'll for sure our support teams will come back to you. For those who we've missed somehow, couldn't answer today. Sorry about that, but we'll come back to you. That's 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll answer this one from Nicola. Is there already a monthly budget report template in Fathom? Absolutely, we have a range of different standard templates that you can use straight off the bat. And I'm certain there is one for budget variance. So it'll include some charts and graphs and tables, similar to the ones that I showed you today.
Okay. I see one question for us. Can you break down a budget in ApprovalMax? For example, total staff training budget is X, and underneath this, each employee has a budget of X. Well, you can either create subcategories, sub-nominal codes, and then you can sort of divide your budget into one of those things. But in general, the way this budget checking works, we're taking a look on the document itself. We see which nominal codes we're using and which tracking categories were used. Therefore, we will only show budgets for those specific values. So if you created several budgets, maybe for one department, and then you've created some subcategories underneath that, then you'll be able to see those numbers just like that, just like you've created.
You've showed us how to create a budget. What's the difference when creating a forecast? Great question. We are creating the budget in the forecasting feature itself. But if you remember my intro slides, the difference with the budget is it's something that's staying static for the financial year. So typically it's something we would set up for at the start of the financial year. We do have a feature where you can save that as the budget in Fathom, and then you'll use that to track going forward. For the forecast, it's going to update live. So as the new month's data rolls through for August, for example, the forecast is actually going to update in Fathom. So the numbers are always changing as time progresses, because it is a reflection of what has happened in the past to project the realistic numbers into the future. So great question there, James.
Yeah. Well, with that being said, thank you very much. I see the questions are still coming in. So, but we don't have much time, unfortunately. We would love to stay more, but first of all, thank you very much for attending today's webinar. I hope that was very useful from both sides, ApprovalMax and Fathom side. Feel free to get started with 14 days free trial and play around with both products and see if you need to request some demo. And yeah, have a lovely rest of the day, and bye-bye.
Thanks very much, everyone. Bye-bye.